for 5 daughters last week. Poor Mr. Dashwood, carried away so suddenly, woke one morning with a fever and drew his last gasp within the week. Poor Mr. Dashwood. But a very handsome funeral. The serenity of the corpse was most delightful. Poor Mr. Dashwood.
And poor Mrs. Dashwood in every sense of the word. You know that his widow and daughters are left with almost nothing.
No.
Not true.
But Norland Park is such a large estate.
Were there very many debts in the family?
Oh no, nothing like that. It was a question of the law.
Did somebody break the law?
No. Mr. Dashwood could not legally bequeath it to the ladies. It all went to his son from the previous marriage, Mr. John Dashwood.
I think that I will give them £1,000 apiece to start their new life.
But wasn't he a rich man already?
Oh yes, he married into money, but his rich wife, not a sympathetic creature, moved into Norland Park the day after the funeral without a word of notice to the new widow.
My dear John, how can you think of taking £4,000 from the fortune of our dear little boy? What possible claim can the Miss Dashwoods, who are only related to you by half-blood, have to so large an amount?
My father's last request was that I provide for them, Fanny.
Your father did not know what he was talking of. I dare say, 10 to 1, he was light-headed at the time. £4,000!
£4,000. Perhaps it's somewhat diminished by one half. £500 apiece would be a great increase to their fortunes.
£2,000! What brother on earth would do so much for even his real sisters?
One had rather do too much than too little. Do you think that they may expect more?
Who knows what they may expect?
£2,000 all at once may overwhelm them and be spent unwisely, I suppose. Perhaps a yearly sum instead?
People always live forever, and there is an annuity to be paid them. To be perfectly honest, my love, I'm convinced your father had no intentions of you giving them any money. I wager when he told you to provide for them, he meant for you to help them move their things and send the occasional presents of fish and game and so forth. My love, may I risk being perfectly honest?
Always, my angel.
The painful truth is that even on his deathbed, your father was not thinking of us, nor of our little Harry. He only thought of them. So, you owe no particular attention to his wishes. My dear, he left them all the best china.
The china is a material consideration. It is absolutely unnecessary to do more, I think, than to help them move comfortably. How liberal and handsome you are, my lamb.
And so the young ladies are left in such reduced circumstances. How shall the girls ever catch a man?
As to that, I understand, Mrs. John Dashwood's brother, Mr. Edward Ferrars, is staying with his sister at Norland for a time. He is a bachelor
And stands to inherit a large fortune from his mother.
If one of the Dashwoods could make a catch of him.
Oh, please do, excuse me.
Mr. Ferrars.
Miss Dashwood, please pardon me, I do not intend to intrude.
Oh, no, you weren't intruding. Are you,
Yes, I am. Writing. A letter, yes. Oh, are you, I see, are you as well?
I am. Writing, yes. Mr. Ferrars, pray do not leave. On my account, that is, the light is very good here.
Miss Dashwood, I fear I have not yet had a proper occasion to express to you, personally, my very sincere condolences on the loss of your father.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Miss Dashwood, I hope that my presence here has not caused you any additional distress in this sad time. My sister, I confess I was not entirely informed of all the particulars before my visit.
Oh, no, you needn't apologize, Mr. Ferrers. In fact, I must thank you. My mother said only yesterday that your presence at Norland is a comfort, and I am very grateful for anything that raises her spirits.
I'm pleased that your mother is pleased. That is, might I inquire after Mrs. Dashwood?
It is rather too early to think of any moderation in grief. My father's death. It is very difficult.
I am sure that you must be a great comfort to her.
I attempt to be. I am writing to our cousin, Sir John Middleton. He may have a cottage available for us in Devonshire. The rent is uncommonly moderate.
I imagine it must be very difficult to leave your home.
Yes. We have been very happy here. I must not smudge this.
Miss Dashwood, please forgive me. I fear I did not mean to upset you.
Mr. Ferrers, I cannot use this.
Miss Dashwood, I beg your pardon.
Oh, no, it's very kind
No,
of
this
you.
is
I beg your
inexcusable.
pardon.
I am very, very
Please
sorry.
stop. You're going to smear.
Fanny, Miss Dashwood was she was kind enough to...
Edward, there is ink on your face.
Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sickly or with the pale cast of thought.
With spirit, Edward.
And enterprises of great pith and moment.
Edward, please. Hamlet is not making polite conversation. In this speech, he is all of mankind, all of humankind, railing against the forces that would keep us tame, that prevent us from acting upon our soul's truest impulses. It is a desperate cry against the futility of a life less than entirely lived. You must be driven almost mad by passion, by rage, by love for the frail beauty of life itself.
With this regard, the codes turn away.
Edward, Shakespeare writes in a rhythm which matches precisely the beats of the human heart. If your heart also beats, which I presume it does,
Yes.
then you cannot help but feel the impossible depth of all of Hamlet's text. And thus, the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought.
With this regard, their currents turn away and lose the name of action.
Soft you now, the fair Ophelia.
Marianne.
Soft you now, the fair Ophelia.
Nymph in thy orisons.
Nymph in thy orisons, be all my sins remembered.
Oh, Edward.
I'm sorry.
A noble effort. Why would you give him Hamlet to begin, Marianne? Nay, Mamma, if one is not to be animated by Hamlet. But I suppose we must allow for differences of taste.
In truth, you have done me a service. I may now tell my mother in all seriousness that I have no talent for public speaking.
Will she take such defeat willingly, Edward? Your sister is always telling us you are destined to be a very great orator.
My life's work seems to be to convince both Fanny and my mother that I am unsuited for public scrutiny.
Then how is your fame to be established? How famous you must be to satisfy them.
I cannot be forced into greatness, thank heaven.
And do you have no ambition?
My ambition is to be happy, but I fear it must be in my own way. Wealth and fame would not make me so.
Strange that it would. What has wealth or fame to do with being happy? Wealth has much to do with it.
Eleanor, for shame.
Money determines more than you might wish, Marianne.
Edward, you promised me you'd show me Fancy's new puppies before dinner.
I did. Shall we make a party of it?
I've seen them already.
It must be a quick visit, Margaret. Please do wear your boots, it's raining.
I don't know where they are.
It's scarcely raining, Ma.
Let us ask Betsy if they've been laid aside.
What a pity it is, Eleanor, that Edward reads so spiritlessly. Marianne, you have been hectoring him all afternoon, and you have only made him more self-conscious. If you would leave him alone for a moment, I'm sure that he would read very well indeed. I was only trying to help. Eleanor, are you truly offended? Do you really think him spiritless? I have the highest opinion possible of Edward, I assure you. I think him everything in the world that is worthy and amiable. Must you always speak so warmly? Don't you agree? I think that Edward is very sensible. His mind is excellent, and if he is not always a brilliant orator, it is only shyness that impedes him. Indeed, he may sometimes appear awkward, but I believe that is only because he strives so earnestly never to hurt any living creature by careless thought or action. Yes, I grant you. Perhaps he's not fashionable. No. Perhaps he's not even widely considered handsome. But once you notice his eyes, which are uncommonly good, and consider the general sweetness of his expression, well, I think him to be very handsome indeed. But what say you, Marianne? I swear that when you tell me to love him as a brother, I shall think him perfect indeed. Marianne, I do not deny that I think very highly of Edward, that I greatly esteem him, that I like him. Esteem him, like him, cold-hearted Eleanor. Forgive me for speaking in so quiet a way of my feelings. Believe them to be stronger than I have declared, but I do not think that Edward feels anything for me beyond friendship. Eleanor, he may have a kind of a preference. Aha! But there are other points to be considered, Marianne. He is dependent on his mother for a living and must obey her wishes in all things. Edward would face many obstacles if he wished to marry a woman with no fortune.
Miss Dashwood, dinner is served.
You must not be diffident, Eleanor. Edward is obviously desperately in love with you, and no material obstacle can stand in the way of love for long. That means it's only a matter of time. Before he binds his soul to yours forever. Where do you pick up these phrases? Stop! You are a goose. Stop! We must go in for dinner.
There was a brown one, and a white one, and one that was almost all white, but with a brown spot on its ear. They were all so sweet. Do you think, Mamma, I may be able to have one as my particular pet? She could sleep in the barn.
We shall see, my dear. I do not know how much room we shall have in the new house.
How fortunate, ma'am, that you were able to find lodging so soon. We are very sorry to lose you, of course.
When exactly are you planning to move?
I might have immediate possession of the cottage, but I imagine it will be some months before we put all the particulars to rights.
I do not think it right that you are moving so far away.
Not too far to visit. Fanny, you and John will always be welcome. And Edward, I hope you will also come and stay with us very soon.
I will, certainly. I will certainly visit soon.
But not too soon, Edward. Do not want you to cut short your visit here. You have so many other obligations. You know Maman expects you next month when Miss Morton is visiting?
I'm not even acquainted with Miss Morton, Fanny. I'm sure that I can manage both.
Do not make promises that you cannot keep. My brother, you know, is very soft-hearted and always wishes to please everybody at every time. But we must not allow him to become too distracted. We have such great expectations for Edward. There truly is no limit to what he may achieve, whether it be in the army, the law, or the government.
Hear, hear.
You know, it is quite burdensome to have such very, very high potential as our Edward does, and I confess it does make me fear for him.
What do you mean, my love?
Why, my poor brother is a fox, and hallooing all around him are hunters and hounds. Oh, whoa!
A fox, Fanny.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I being very abstract? My brother is a target. He is prey. Opportunists are always circling. You get to pounce. There is no predator so fierce, no creature so shameless as an unmarried woman in the desperate pursuit of a wealthy man. It is a sad reflection of our libertine age, but I assure you these fortune hunters are all too common, and I do use that term broadly.
Fanny!
What? I am merely making conversation.
I misspoke earlier. We shall remove ourselves from this house within a week, no matter the expense. I have lost my appetite. Girls, come.
Oh!
Miss Dashwood, I wanted to say, very safe travels to your new home.
It's so small.
Margaret, it will fit us all comfortably, and Thomas and Betsy. We are really very fortunate, dear.
Where shall I put my telescope?
Next to my pianoforte. You may spy on the neighbours.
Marianne.
You may not spy on the neighbours.
It is rather small, but I am sure that we will soon have plenty of money, and we may then think about building.
Hello!
Hello!
Mrs. Dashwood. Welcome. May I present my mother-in-law, Mrs. Jennings.
Hello, how do you do? Always so thrilling to meet a relation. Excuse these noisy devils. They get overexcited. Hush!
Sir John, my daughters, Eleanor, Marianne, and Margaret.
Have you ever seen prettier girls in all the world?
I'm sure they have left many broken young gentlemen in Devonshire. Hush!
You must, of course, dine at Barton Park every day.
Come, you must come. We shall not
yes.
leave until you agree to come.
We shall wait on you for dinner if it is no inconvenience.
Lady Middleton will be so pleased.
Oh, she shall be frantic with excitement.
Expect you tonight.
Tonight?
The prettiest girl.
Hush! Hush!
I must apologize to you, Miss Eleanor and Miss Marianne. I was unable to get any eligible young bachelors here tonight. Only our particular friend, Colonel Brandon. But he is neither young nor very gay, I'm afraid. Brandon, old boy, come and feast your eyes upon Miss Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood. Brandon, aren't the most charming girls in all England? To dinner. I only hope you do not find it so very dull.
Miss Margaret, surely you can tell us the name of the young man who was Miss Eleanor's particular favourite in Sussex.
I must not tell. May I, Eleanor?
Margaret, remember that whatever conjectures you may have, you've no right to repeat them.
I never had any conjectures about it. It was you who told me of it yourself. Ow!
Pray, Miss Margaret, let us know all about it. What is the gentleman's name?
I must not tell, ma'am, but I know very well what it is, and I know where he is too.
We can guess where he is. In Norland, to be sure. He is the curate of the parish, I dare say.
He is of no profession at all.
Margaret, you know that this is all your own invention and that there is no such person in existence.
Well then, he is lately dead, Marianne, for I am sure there was such a man once. And his name begins with an F. F!
It has rained very hard recently. It has rained every day for the last fortnight, I believe. Do you not find the weather unusually inclement of late, Mum?
Rain. Shocking. Rain.
Yes, it has been a very wet spring.
Margaret, please be so good as to join me at the pianoforte.
Why? Ow!
Oh, Miss Marianne, do you play?
Please do excuse my sister's enthusiasm.
No, pound away, by all means.
Yes, we are all prepared to be charmed.
Very fond of music.
Oh, Colonel Brandon is very much in love with Miss Marianne Dashwood. I rather suspected it to be so on the first evening they met. From his listening while she sang, and on the second visit when he listened to her sing again. It is a perfect match, for he is rich and she is handsome, and I am sure he need not wait any longer.
Colonel Brandon is a very eligible bachelor.
A bit long in the tooth. Why, my Cassandra sent her cab at him, and that was 10 years ago.
Oh, that great big property he inherited. I cannot think of it, I'm breathless.
Such a sober man, a young woman's touch might liven him up a bit.
A young, pretty woman. Either breathe life into him or kill him within a fortnight.
A match, a perfect match. I will find a good husband for every decent girl in the county. Mark my words. Is nearly old enough to be my father, and if he was ever animated enough to be in love, has long outlived the sensation. When is a man to be safe from such wit, if age and infirmity do not protect him?
Infirmity? Do you call Colonel Brandon infirm?
Yesterday he spoke of his flannel waistcoat.
And?
A flannel waistcoat for his aching joints, the commonest signifier of declining life.
My dearest child, if you estimate the Colonel thus, I imagine you must be in continual terror of my decay. It must seem to you a miracle that I still live.
Mamma, you are not doing me justice. I know that Colonel Brandon is not in any danger of immediate expiration. He may live 20 years longer, but
A man of his age should have nothing to do with matrimony. Perhaps a man of his age and a lady of your age should not have anything to do with matrimony together. But if there were a woman who was single at 30, I do not think anyone would object to the Colonel marrying her.
A woman of 30 can never hope to feel or inspire affection again. If her fortune is small, I suppose she might bring herself to be a nurse, for the security of being a wife.
Must you doom Colonel Brandon to a slow decline because he happened to complain of an ache in his shoulder? If he had been in a violent fever, you would not despise him half so much. Confess, Marianne, is there not something thrilling to you in the flushed cheek, hollow eye, and quick pulse of a fever?
Ma'am, Lord Middleton is here to ask if you have any letters to post.
Hello.
I will take them.
Margaret, will you go and get your boots on?
We're not still going for a walk, are we? It's going to rain.
No, it is not. Now go and get your boots, please.
Oh, boots. Boots, boots, boots.
Mamma, I have had an alarm on the subject of sickness which I must share with you. I am sure that Edward Ferrars is not well. We have been here almost a fortnight and he has not yet come. What else but grave illness could be keeping him away?
Does Eleanor expect him?
She must.
She has said nothing to me.
It is all so strange. Do you know, I purposely left them alone together twice on our last morning at Norland, and each time you most unaccountably followed me out of the room.
What?
Are you still walking? It looks as though it is going to rain.
Marianne.
All this talk of a wet spring, it is not going to rain. The day will be everlastingly fair. Now come along.
A very wet spring. We should tell Betsy to put on tea. They will be soaked through.
Eleanor, Mama, Marianne fell and hurt her ankle, and a gentleman grabbed her right up.
Margaret, what on earth?
Marianne's preserver. Marianne's preserver. Marianne's preserver.
Please, forgive my intrusion, ma'am. The lady took a tumble and was not able to stand.
Margaret, run and tell Betsy what has happened. Marianne, dearest, are you in much pain?
Only a wrenched ankle, I think.
Heavens, you were there. Please, sir, will you sit and take some tea?
I am dirty and wet and do not want to spoil your furniture.
Might I ask as to whom you're so obliged?
My name is John Willoughby. I hope, ma'am, you will allow me the honor of calling tomorrow to inquire after Miss...
Dashwood is our name. I am Mrs. Dashwood, this is Eleanor, Margaret, and...
Miss Marianne Dashwood.
You will be very welcome, Mr. Willoughby. Will you not wait for the rain to clear?
Thank you, ma'am, but my pointers are outside. A little more water will not melt me. Until tomorrow.
Marianne's gallant preserver. And then Mama asked him whether he would sit down, but he would not, as he was so muddy and dirty. But he is to call again today.
Do you know any gentleman by the name of Willoughby?
Willoughby? What? Is he in the county? He's down here every spring. I must ask Eleanor on Thursday.
And what sort of a young man is he?
As good a fellow as ever lived. Not a bolder rider in England.
And where is his residence?
Mr. Willoughby has no property of his own in this county. He resides here only while visiting his rich old cousin, Mrs. Smith, at Allingham Court. He's to inherit the estate and all the fortune, eventually.
Oh.
He's very well worth catching, Miss Dashwood. And if I were you, I would not give him up so easily to my younger sister. Miss Marianne must not expect to have all the men to herself. Brandon will be jealous if she does not take care.
My daughters, Sir John, have not been brought up to catch gentlemen. I am glad to hear, however, that he is a respectable young man.
Of course he is respectable, Mamma.
I see how it is. You will be setting your captain now, and never think of poor Brandon. How can he compete with all this tumbling about and spraining of ankles?
Cooper,
Yes, I dare say that Scott or Pope is a more serious-minded answer. But I'm afraid that Cooper is my favourite poet of our time.
Cooper may indeed be the greatest poet of any time. Pray, what is your favourite poem, Mr. Willoughby? Mine must be Hope. I think...
Oh, see me sworn to serve thee and command, a painter's skill into a poet's hand.
That, while I, trembling, trace a work divine, fancy may stand aloof from the design, and light, and shade, and every stroke be thine.
Mr. Willoughby, won't you join us for dinner?
I beg your pardon, ma'am, but I must dine with my cousin at Allenham. I had no idea it was so late. My time prior after Miss Marianne again tomorrow.
By all means, until tomorrow. Well, Marianne, nobody can ever accuse you of being too reserved. You are right, Eleanor. I have been too much at ease, too happy, too frank. I have been open and sincere when I ought to have been spiritless and dull. I suppose you think I should have talked solely of the weather and the roads, and only spoken once every 10 minutes. Or better yet, never spoken at all.
My love, she's only teasing you. Eleanor, surely we would never wish to check Marianne's conversations with her new friend.
A love match indeed. I hear that Mr. Willoughby visits the Dashwoods every day,
Scooping her up in the driving rain.
Adlord of gypsies, and you never penny novel.
Married within a month, mark my words.
He has no money to marry. Depends entirely on that old cousin.
But when he inherits from her, they will be wealthy indeed. Wealthy and handsome. What more could one wish?
Oh, look at them. No eyes for anyone else in the world.
This is indeed the season of my happiness.
But what of poor Colonel Brandon?
Colonel Brandon is wet spring.
Colonel Brandon is the kind of man everyone speaks well of, and who nobody cares about.
Why should you dislike him? Why should you like him? He is very civil. He has seen a great deal of the world and always answers my inquiries with good breeding and good nature. That is to say, he has told you that in the East Indies the climate is hot and the mosquitoes are troublesome. You are both unfair to him, and it is not witty in either of you.
Aha! In defense of your protege, Miss Dashwood, you can even be saucy.
My protege, as you call him, is a sensible man, and sense will always have attractions for me. Yes, Marianne, even in a man over 40.
Oh, he is very respectable. As respectable as a statue or a monument. A terrible, stiff, perfectly inhuman colonel. I'm amazed he can still bend at the waist.
Well, I have always found him to be a perfect gentleman.
But not me.
Helena.
No. I fear she's only too right. Miss Dashwood, forgive me in utter self-reproach. I cast myself at your feet to once again bask in the light of your sweet approbation. I surrender my case entirely. I, John Willoughby, confess that Colonel Brandon's character is completely and entirely irreproachable. And yet somehow, I dislike him as much as ever. Speak of the devil.
Oh, we are never safe from him.
You have poor timing, Brandon. I was just about to take Miss Marianne to look at the greenhouse. There's some very interesting orchids there.
Orchids? Yes, we must go look at the orchids. I so adore an orchid. Please do excuse us, Colonel.
Your sister is full of life.
She is certainly energetic. Someday her disposition will settle, I hope.
I am sorry to think of her ever changing.
I cannot say I agree with you there. Marianne's ideals are all very romantic, but they tend to discard propriety entirely. She would benefit from someone with a more mature understanding of certain realities.
Do not desire it too much. I once knew a lady who resembled your sister, and her introduction to what you might call realities was very unfortunate. I will not trouble you with the story. Pardon me, have you dropped this?
Oh, yes.
Shall I have it laundered?
No, thank you.
I beg your pardon, but you see, it is covered pink.
Colonel Brandon, please excuse me. May I steal my sister's attention for a moment? Eleanor, I have the most wonderful news. Willoughby has given me a horse. A horse? One which is exactly bred to carry a woman. He is sending his groom for it immediately. Marianne, you cannot accept such a present. Why not? Eleanor, we shall share its use. A horse? From a strange man? What strange man? We are speaking of Willoughby. And he is very little known to you. I may not have been acquainted with Willoughby for long, Eleanor, but I know him much better than I know any other creature in the world. Except you and Ma, of course. Marianne, let us not touch upon the impropriety for a moment. We cannot afford to keep a horse. Surely we could find the money. We have enough to do just to keep ourselves respectable. There must be some way. We must go in for dinner. I must speak to you at your kind offer.
But Marianne... Queen Mab is still yours, Marianne. I shall keep her only until you can claim her for your more lasting home.
What is the matter, Brandon?
You left my dinner table. No bad news, Colonel, I hope.
None at all, ma'am.
But what was that letter?
Merely a letter of business.
Then how did it discompose you so much? Come, let us hear the truth of it. Oh, I know who it is from, and I hope she is well.
Whom do you mean, ma'am?
Oh, you know who.
I am very sorry, ma'am, that I received this tonight. I am afraid that it requires my immediate attendance in town.
What can you have to do in town at this time of year?
And I do not mean to break up the party, but I am afraid that I must depart this moment.
Tonight? Absurd. Go tomorrow instead.
I regret that I cannot.
There are some people who cannot bear a party of pleasure. I would lay 50 guineas that Brandon invented this trick to get out of our gathering.
I have no doubt of it.
This is all very unorthodox.
Well, when will you come back again?
I dare not say. Your horses are ready, sir.
You'd better change your mind.
It is not in my power. Might I see you and your sisters in London this winter, Miss Dashwood?
I am afraid not.
Then I must bid you farewell for a longer time than I should wish. Miss Marianne.
Colonel, before you go, do let us know what you are going about.
Good evening, ma'am.
How provoking.
I can guess what his business is. It is about Miss Williams, I am sure.
And who is Miss Williams?
She is a relation of the Colonel's, my dear. A very near relation. I will not say how near, for fear of shocking you. She is his natural daughter.
Indeed.
And as like him as she can stare. It was the great scandal of the county 15 odd years ago. The mother died, I understand, although we never could get all of the details. He is very fond of the little love child. I dare say he will leave her all his fortune.
A love child from old prim and proper Brandon. What a first-rate hypocrite.
Did Brandon give you any further intelligence?
No. I suppose it must be something he's ashamed of. Well, despite our reduced numbers, we must make ourselves merry. What do you all say to a ramble after dinner? A short little drive by the country.
Ask Mr. Willoughby and Miss Marianne about drives in the country, Mum. I have found you out in spite of all your tricks. This morning, when we all went driving and you two sped away out of sight, I made my woman inquire of your groom, sir, and I know where you spent the morning.
Yes, out in my carriage.
Yes, Mr. Impudence, and I found out where you went in that carriage. I hope you like your future house, Miss Marianne, and I look forward to visiting you in Eleanor.
A good trick on us. Mr. Willoughby, tell me, have you still got that fine mare?
Did you really visit Eleanor with Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
With no companion other than Mr. Willoughby?
We did not do anything wrong, Eleanor. Mr. Willoughby has a perfect right to shoe that estate. It will all one day belong to him.
Even if Eleanor were to one day belong to you, Marianne, you would not be justified in what you have done.
Eleanor?
Why didn't you tell me?
Why don't you talk to me about Edward?
There is nothing to tell.
Well, the same is true for me. There is nothing to tell, really, Eleanor. We took a little stroll. Perhaps it was rather ill-judged of me to go without a chaperone or formal invitation, but Willoughby wanted particularly to shoot me privately. There is this sweet little garden there, and a sitting room just so.
No news of an engagement yet.
I cannot think why he used her Christian name quite openly.
Such an extraordinary silence. An establishment may not be made within his power until he inherits.
He certainly lives expensively.
Old fashioned and no fortune, as they say.
But no announcement of their attachment yet.
Why such secrecy?
Why such secrecy? Why such secrecy? I have such a secret to tell you both about Marianne. I am sure she will be married to Mr. Willoughby very soon.
You have said that almost every day since they met, Margaret.
But indeed, now I am sure, for he has got a lock of her hair.
How do you know?
I know many secrets, Eleanor.
Margaret.
I saw him take it. Last night, after tea, when you and Mamma went out of the room, they were whispering together. And he took up her scissors and cut off a lock of her hair, and he kissed it and he put it in his pocketbook. And today, she asked to stay at home, alone. I am sure he must be visiting with her now.
Margaret.
It is Mr. Willoughby's curricle outside. I told you he did visit her.
Marianne?
Mr. Willoughby,
Good day.
is anything amiss?
Yes, there has been a very heavy disappointment. I'm afraid I'm unable to picnic with you today.
Well then, perhaps tomorrow.
Mrs. Smith has commanded her poor dependent cousin to conduct some business for her in London. Right away. I've just received my marching orders and must leave immediately.
Her business will not keep you for so long, I hope.
You are very kind, but I do not think I can return to Devonshire soon. Mrs. Smith will not have me more than once a year.
And is Allenham the only house in the neighbourhood in which you are welcome? For shame, Willoughby. Do you need a formal invitation to visit us here?
You are too good. My engagements at present are of such a nature. It is folly to linger. I will not torment myself by remaining any longer.
Margaret, will you go and tell Betsy that Marianne won't be coming down for dinner?
But
Please. Do you think that they have quarrelled?
oh, Eleanor, why do you always love to think the worst?
I don't. But what else could have happened?
Why, it is perfectly obvious. I can account for everything.
Can you?
Yes. Mrs. Smith must have invented this business in London as an excuse to send Willoughby away. Word has finally reached her of the attachment between Willoughby and Marianne. She disapproves and strives to separate them. Because he is dependent on her, he dares not confess to her, yet that they are already engaged, and must obey her wishes, for a time. And that is why he cannot predict when he will return. Eleanor, what say you?
Nothing. You may be right, Mamma.
Your countenance suggests that you think otherwise. What are your conjectures?
I do not mean to cast suspicion, but, Mamma, while it may indeed be prudent to conceal their engagement from Mrs. Smith, why do they conceal it from us?
His entire behavior to Marianne declares that he considers her as his future wife.
My doubts may soon be done away. If they write to each other, they are obviously engaged.
A mighty concession indeed. Ungracious girl. If you were to see them at the altar, would you then admit they were going to be married?
Perhaps we should go and ask Marianne directly, if she is engaged.
You may do as you like, but I find it very ungenerous to ever force such a confidence. I would not ask that question for the world. Marianne shall tell me what she will, when she will, however she sees fit.
I have told Betsy she wants to know if she should send Marianne's dinner up.
Let us practice your French, dear.
Nobody ever tells me anything.
Marianne, are you walking? Shall I join you?
Where would you like to go?
On the downs?
I am sorry, Eleanor, I meant to go on the lanes.
Marianne, please. For weeks you have avoided everyone. Will you take the air with me, once? The sky is very beautiful today. We never finished reading Marchemont, Marianne. Perhaps we could set it aside until Willoughby rejoins us, though it may be many months before that happens.
Months? No, nor many weeks.
Indeed. Marianne, have you and Willoughby...
Eleanor, who is that?
Is it Colonel Brandon?
No.
Is it Willoughby?
No, Eleanor, look! Hello, it is us, yes, hello!
Mr. Ferrars.
Miss Dashwood, Miss Marianne.
Edward, oh, Edward! Good God, what on earth could have taken you so long?
Yes, hello. I'm very pleased to see you both.
Indeed, this is almost the greatest happiness imaginable. Have you come directly from Norland?
No, I have been in Devonshire a fortnight and now come purposely to visit you.
Edward, you have been in the county a fortnight without visiting us.
I have been visiting some friends near Plymouth.
Welcome. Walk back with us. Mamma will be so happy to finally see you. Or perhaps I should just run ahead and tell her that you're coming.
Marianne, wait. Perhaps we should all just walk together.
Sir John, Mrs. Jennings, may I present Mr. Edward Ferrars.
Oh! Mr. Ferrars!
Mr. Ferrars.
What an unspeakable pleasure to meet you, Mr.
Ferrars?
Would anyone care for some tea? Please.
I would, certainly.
Ferrars.
you wear a ring before, Edward. Is it new?
Yes. No. It is old, that is, but new to me. Recent. Have I never worn it before? Yes.
Mr. Ferris.
Long F, sir. Long F.
Mr. Ferris, you must have dinner with us tomorrow night, for we shall be quite alone. And the night after, you must absolutely dine with us again, for we shall be a large party.
And perhaps we may raise a dance in the next week. How long shall we have you in our corner of England, Mr. Ferris? We are quite bereft of eligible bachelors here. However long you remain a bachelor, that is.
Mother, I'm afraid I'm only staying tonight, Mum.
No.
A lot of riding for such a short visit.
Only for tonight, Edward.
Oh, I see. I suppose you only came for some particular errand.
Oh, I see. I was in the county, Mum.
Well, whatever your reason, we must have you stay longer now.
Yes, young man, do not be a ninny.
Stay.
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 Stay!
Edward, really, you are more than welcome.
Stay!
Stay!
Stay.
I'm afraid I must attend my mother.
Truly, Mr. Ferris, such a very short visit.
Why come at all?
Really, Edward, it's too ridiculous. You must stay.
I'm sorry beyond what I can say, but I must go to my mother.
Well, and what are Mrs. Ferrers' aims for you at present, Edward?
Much the same. I'm to rise high in the world, but I must have no profession. That would be too common. Given the choice, I should like to find employment in the church, but it is not smart enough for my family. And so my own nicety and the nicety of my relations turns me into what I am, an idle, helpless being.
Come, Edward, such melancholy. Your mother will give you, in time, the financial independence that you are so anxious for. How much good may not a few months do?
I think that I may define many months to produce any good to me. What is a man if his chief good and market of his time be but to sleep and feed a beast no more? That's from Hamlet, Marianne. But perhaps you didn't recognize it because my delivery is so improved. Forgive me if I'm very saucy.
I love to be reminded of the past, Edward, and you will never offend me by talking of it.
And do you feel so strongly about Hamlet's beating heart as you once did?
At my time of life, opinions are fixed. It is not likely that I should now ever change them.
Marianne is as steadfast as ever.
She has only grown a little more grave.
Nay, Edward, you need not reproach me. You are not very gay yourself.
No, I suppose not.
But worse, you are reserved.
Reserved?
Yes, very.
What do you mean?
Marianne thinks anybody too reserved who is not quite so open as she is. And here we are at last.
Well, Edward, I suppose we must bid you adieu. Do you know when you may return?
I cannot say.
Please do come again soon, Edward. Please.
Miss Dashwood.
Hello, Miss Dashwood. Oh,
Hello, Miss Dashwood. Where is Miss Marianne? She ran away because we are come.
She is out walking.
well, lay that work aside for one moment, Lady in the Street. I brought you some strangers, Miss Anne and Lucy Steele, who were to stay with us at the park. How do you like them?
Hush, they will hear you. I met them on a morning's excursion to Exeter and discovered them to be my relations. Yes, the cousins of my cousin Mildred's own Mr. John. Nay, not you, sir. A shorter, fuller man, if you please. Very gouty, poor fellow, and never comfortable in the least bit of damp. Where was I?
Your relations, ma'am.
Yes, can you imagine? Naturally, we invited them to stay with us directly. I dare say you can see the resemblance.
They are the sweetest girls in all the world. You must come for a visit tonight. You cannot think how you will like them.
Come. What a lovely room this is. So very well appointed.
Indeed.
How do you do, Miss Dashwood? I suppose you are very sorry to leave Sussex and that big fine house when your father died and you lost all your money.
We were very sad to leave Norland.
Excuse me.
And had you a great many smart beaux there? There may be a vast many smart beaux in Exeter, I'm sure, but Lord knows if I can tell what beaux there may be about Norland. And perhaps Miss Dashwood might find it dull here if they do not have as many as they used to have. But perhaps you two do not care about the beaux and had us leave me without. For my part, I think them vastly agreeable, provided they dress smart and behave civil. I can't bear to see them dirty and nasty. Now there's Mr. Rose, Exeter, clerk to Mr. Simpson, and if you do but meet him a morning, he is not fit to be seen. Oh. Well, I suppose your brother was quite a beau, Miss Dashwood, before he married, as he was so rich, and... Well, Sir John tells us Miss Marianne has a special admirer who is very handsome. Oh, and I do hope you have good luck yourself soon, Miss Dashwood. But perhaps you have a special gentleman friend already.
His name is Ferris. Pray do not tell it, for it is a great secret.
Mr. Ferris! Mr. Ferris is the happy man. Your sister-in-law's brother, Miss Dashwood. Why, we know him very, very well.
And we have met Mr. Ferris once or twice at her uncle's, but we hardly know him well.
Well, I shall say no more. Not for all the money in the world. I do believe I shall see if Miss Marianne is an Aria's. I am passionately fond of an Aria.
Miss Dashwood, please pardon me, but I wonder if I might ask you something rather odd? Pray, are you closely acquainted with your sister-in-law's mother, Mrs. Ferrers?
No, I have never met her.
Truly? Oh, I suppose she might have visited Norland sometimes.
I am afraid not.
You must think me very strange for inquiring about her. I wish I could tell you why I ask, but I do not wish you to think me impertinent. I could not bear to have you think me impertinent. I would rather anything in the world than be thought impertinent by a person like you.
I assure you.
And I do wish so much that I could tell you my reasons, and I would indeed be very glad of your advice in a trying matter, but I do not want to trouble you. I am sorry that you do not happen to know Mrs. Ferrers.
I am sorry that I do not, but I confess, I did not know that you were at all acquainted with that family.
Forgive me, it was an odd question. Do not think of it any more. See, dearest Miss Dashwood, can I trust you?
Pardon?
Would you keep a very great and grave and important secret? If I burdened myself to you entirely, would you solemnly promise never, ever, ever to tell anyone what I will tell you now? Mrs. Ferrers is indeed nothing to me at present, but the time will come when we may be very intimately connected indeed.
Good heavens! Have you an understanding with Mr. Robert Ferrers?
No, I never saw him in my life, but I am engaged to his eldest
brother. I dare say he never dropped the smallest hint of it to you or your family. It is a great secret, for I have no fortune, and we fear his mother will take away all his inheritance if he chooses to marry a girl with no money.
I beg your pardon. There must be some mistake. We cannot mean the same, Mr. Edward Ferrars.
I assure you, I am not mistaken about the name of the man on whom all my happiness depends. Mr. Edward Ferrars.
Mr. Edward Ferrars.
We can mean no other.
May I ask if your engagement is of long standing?
We have been engaged these 4 years.
4 years?
Yes, but we have known each other for far longer. He was a pupil for many years with my uncle, Mr. Pratt, who lives at Longstipple. He visited us there recently. Oh, I suppose just before he visited you here.
You are his friends in Plymouth?
I am. Oh, no, did you think him sadly out of spirits? Poor Edward, it does break his heart terribly for us to be separated. I gave him a lock of my hair set in a ring, and that was some comfort, he said, but not equal to us being together. Perhaps you noticed the ring when you saw him?
Lucy, what is that song the doctor was asking me to sing last Thursday? Pardon my interruption.
Miss Dashwood, I hope we can speak of this again. It is such a relief to confide in someone so much older and wiser. Until now, Anne is the only other person I've been able to ask advice of, and I know my dear Edward cannot be angry at me for confiding in you. He has told me so much about you and your family, and I know that he looks upon you quite as his own sister. Might we see you in London this winter?
No.
I am sorry for that. We could have spent many happy hours together. Anne and I are going in December to see some relations, but I'm really going to see my darling Edward. I will, of course, give him your very, very best.
My dear Miss Dashwood, gather round. Oh, Miss Marianne, if you prefer, keep paddling away there, but do attend to me closely. I have a wonderful proposal for you, my dears. Every winter, you know, I'm in the habit of removing to a nice stop in London near Portman Square, but this year I have been scheming my little chickens, and I have hit upon it. I am entirely resolved that this go-round you both must come with me to town as my guests and keep a stupid old woman hopping.
I do thank you, Mum. It is a very kind offer, but I am afraid we cannot leave my mother.
Pooh, I'm sure she will not object. On the contrary, she will think me very fit to procure you both a bevy of eligible young London bachelors.
Miss Marianne seems eager enough. Our Mr. Willoughby lives in town, does he not?
One or the other of you I must have. I cannot live poking around by myself. Come, Miss Marianne, let us strike hands upon the bargain. And if Miss Eleanor changes her mind by and by, why, so much the better.
I so sincerely thank you, Mum. I must ask my mother's consent first, I suppose, but I assure you it would be almost the greatest happiness I could ever think of.
That certainly sounds promising.
We will consult with Mamma, yes, but I am sure that she will decide against it.
It is a wonderful plan.
Can't I go? May not I go?
Perhaps in a few years, my dear.
In a few years, I will be beyond all improvement.
Mamma, I do not think this is prudent. Although Mrs. Jennings has a good heart, her protection cannot give us consequence in London.
If Eleanor is frightened away by Mrs. Jennings, Mamma, it does not prevent my accepting her invitation.
Oh, what a sudden and miraculous display of enthusiasm for Mrs. Jennings.
I will have you both go. These objections are nonsensical. You will enjoy touring London, and if Eleanor would ever condescend to anticipate enjoyment, she might foresee having a very interesting time. John and Fanny always winter in town, and you shall have to visit them. And perhaps in doing so, you may encounter some other members of the Ferrers family.
Ferrers. I like Edward Ferrers well enough, but that is scarcely a reason to go all the way to London.
Must you always be so cold?
Marianne!
Eleanor, please, just... Don't you see? That going to town may secure both of our happinesses forever. I cannot stand it, Eleanor. I must see Willoughby or I will go mad. Please.
Please promise me that you will behave yourself. Marianne, I am writing home tomorrow.
I am not writing to my mother.
Has any letter been delivered for me today?
No letter has come but this.
For me?
No, ma'am, for my mistress.
You are expecting a letter then?
No.
You have no confidence in me, Marianne.
Nay, Eleanor, this reproach from you. You confide in no one.
Me? Marianne, I again have nothing to tell.
Nor I. Our situations are then alike. Neither of us has anything to tell. You because you do not communicate, and I because I conceal nothing.
Marianne.
Oh, Eleanor, it is him! Oh!
Miss Dashwood, I am pleased to see you in London.
Oh, Colonel, I am monstrous glad to see you. I beg your pardon, but I have been on my feet all day. I have brought 2 young ladies with me, you see. You see but one of them now, but there is another somewhere, and it is your friend, Miss Marianne. Yes, I thought that would please you. I do not know what you and Mr. Willoughby will do between you about her. It is a fine thing to be young and handsome. Or so I think. I never was handsome. But I was young once, or so I seem to remember. Oh, pardon me a moment. I have forgot to speak to cook about dinner. One has always a world of little odd things to do while one has been away, and I have had old Cartwright to settle with. Lord, I have been as busy as a bee. Buzz, buzz, buzz!
Miss Might I congratulate you on the acquisition of a brother?
What do you mean?
Your sister's engagement to Mr. Willoughby.
If she is engaged to Mr. Willoughby, this is the first time I've heard of it.
Their marriage is universally talked of.
By whom?
By some of whom you know nothing, by others with whom you are most intimate. Is it true, Miss Dashwood?
Though they have never told me of their terms, of their mutual affection I have no doubt, and I am not surprised to hear of their engagement.
To your sister, I wish all imaginable happiness. To Willoughby, that he may endeavour to deserve her.
Colonel, do you prefer boiled fowls and veal cutlets? Colonel, honestly, that man. 3 weeks gone by, and still no visit from Mr. Willoughby. It must be very teasing to you, Miss Marianne. But at the Fitzgerald's ball, there will be many pretty fellows to attend upon you, and I am sure Mr. Willoughby will turn up sharpish when he hears how many gentlemen you dance with tonight. Willoughby!
Miss Dashwood.
Willoughby, good God, will you not shake hands with me?
I do hope your mother is well.
Have you not received my letters? For heaven's sake, Willoughby, what is the matter?
I did receive the information about your arrival in town, which you were so good as to send me. Please, excuse me.
Oh, Marianne! Pray, be composed, and do not betray what you feel to everybody present. Eleanor, go to him this moment. Force him to come to me. Marianne, no. With all of these people watching, not now, dearest, please. Oh, Eleanor, I am unwell. I am very unwell. My dear Miss Marianne, I have something from a certain special someone which I am sure you will find to your liking. Oh, I have never seen a young woman so desperately in love in my life. Pray, when are they to be married? You don't really, Mum, believe that my sister is engaged to Mr. Willoughby. I always thought you were only joking.
For shame, Miss Eleanor. How can you talk so? We all know that they were madly in love with each other from the first moment they met. Because you were so sly about it personally. You think that nobody else has any sense. But I tell you, all society knows of it. From here to Devonshire and back again. I tell everybody of it myself.
Indeed, Mum, you're mistaken. And you were doing a very unkind thing in spreading the report.
Yes, you are a very clever and subtle creature, Miss Eleanor. Mum's the word until the banns are ready. I am off to visit my Charlotte, but I have asked Susan to lay out a nice breakfast for you two to stuff yourselves. Ta-ta!
My dear madam, I gather that something in my behavior last night did not meet with your approval, although I am at a loss as to how I offended you. Allow me to be plain. I am sorry if you ever mistook my friendship for something more, but you must acknowledge that anything of that nature is and has been impossible, as my affections have been long engaged with another young lady. John Willoughby.
Eleanor, what shall I do? What shall I do?
Marianne, please, try to stay calm.
How can I be calm?
What good does it do to become hysterical?
Leave me if it upsets you so much.
Do not indulge in this display.
Leave me, hate me, forget me. But do not ask me not to feel.
Marianne, it might have been worse. Your engagement could have gone on much longer before he ended it.
What engagement?
You weren't engaged? But, Marianne, you wrote to him.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. How do you do, my dear? Poor thing. She looks very bad. And no wonder. It is but too true. Mrs. Taylor told me of it downstairs, and I almost sank on the spot. Well, said I, if this is true, he has used a woman of my acquaintance abominably ill, and I wish with all my soul his wife may plague his heart out. But he is not the only man in the world worth having, Miss Marianne. You will soon be beating them back with a stout stick. Yes, have your little cry out. Luckily, the Parris and Sandersons are coming tonight, and that will amuse her.
Dear Mum, I am sure that Marianne won't leave her room today.
I cannot believe that a man should use a pretty girl so ill. But when there is plenty money on one side and none on the other...
The lady, then, is very rich?
£50,000, my dear. The young Miss Grey, a stylish girl, they say, but not handsome. £50,000. And it won't come before it's wanted, for they say he is all to pieces. Well, 'tis a true saying about an ill wind, for it will be all the better for Colonel Brandon. How he'll chuckle over this news. I shall spirit him up as soon as I can. Perhaps he'll come tonight. One shoulder of mutton, you know, derives another down.
All she wants is gossip, and she only likes me because I supply her with it. Marianne,
I do not want to talk.
I will leave you, if you promise to rest.
I recollected that I had some fine old Constantia wine in the house, and have brought a glass of it for your sister. My poor husband was very fond of it, whenever he had a touch of his gout.
How good you are, ma'am.
Colonel Brandon, miss.
I am afraid Mrs. Jennings is away from home, Colonel.
And your sister?
Marianne is unwell.
Perhaps then, what I heard this morning, there may be more truth in it than I thought possible.
What did you hear?
It concerned a certain gentleman.
You mean Mr. Willoughby's sudden engagement to Miss Grey? Have you also heard that Miss Grey has £50,000?
How is your sister?
Her sufferings have been very severe.
Miss Ashford, I may be able to offer some comfort. No, not comfort, but I may be able to relate some history about Mr. Willoughby which may bring some clarity.
Please, go on.
You may find me a very awkward narrator.
Please.
In my youth, I knew a lady who was very like your sister Marianne, both in person and in temperament. I loved her, and she loved me in return. But Eliza had no fortune, and I was a young man, no independence and no occupation. I was under my father's power. He forbade the match, of course. A marriage of that kind was impossible, he said, unthinkable. And though I protested violently, I am ashamed to say that he won his point at the last. Threatened with disinheritance and disownment, I faltered, and Eliza was sent away. At 17, I was also shipped off to my regiment to the East Indies, and there lost contact with Eliza entirely. A man came along and treated her kindly for a time, and then another, and then another. I returned to England a grown man, independent and determined to find her. By the time I did, she was dying in the poorhouse, her infant by her side. You may have heard some rumors about my ward, Miss Jane Williams. She is Eliza's daughter, whom I swore to look after as my own. That was 15 years ago. Last February, Jane suddenly disappeared from her boarding school. For months, I could not find her. Finally, I received a letter from her on that night that I left Barton so suddenly. In it, she did not name the man who had seduced her. His luck, for I would have done him violence at the table, even as he basked in your sister's smiles.
Mr. Willoughby.
He left Jane in a situation of the utmost distress, with no home, no help, no friends, ignorant of his whereabouts. She is 15, and now she is with child.
This is beyond everything.
When I came to you last week, I thought that all was settled between your sister and Mr. Willoughby. I did not know how I could stop the marriage without heaping scandal upon both her and my poor Jane.
Who knows what his designs on Marianne were?
I promise you, Miss Dashwood, if I did not, from my heart, believe that this might eventually lessen Miss Marianne's regrets, I never would have burdened you with such troubling information. I am sure I keep you from your sister.
Marianne, before I write to Mamma, I have something I need to tell you.
I suppose you have heard about Mr. Willoughby's very expeditious nuptials.
I heard his creditors breathe much easier.
I heard Miss Grey wore orange blossoms to her wedding. Orange blossoms at this time of year.
They say the younger Miss Dashwood is broken-hearted and very ill. They had been corresponding, you know.
Indeed.
Oh, yes, she wrote to him openly.
Very forward of her.
No one to keep her in check. The father is dead, you know.
Well, what can you expect?
I heard that she went out riding with him alone. I am not surprised.
I am sure that all of the Dashwood girls run quite wild.
And no money at all to speak of.
Then what did she expect?
Poor girl.
Silly girl.
Very forward, very foolish.
What a waste.
And so you see that we never really knew Willoughby at all. Marianne?
I would sooner think myself deceived by all the world than by Willoughby.
He has practiced nothing but deceit, from beginning to end.
I cannot explain his behavior towards that poor girl, but whatever his sins, I know that he loved me. He loves me. That much is true.
Did he tell you that he loved you?
Yes. No, never absolutely. It does not matter.
Of course it does. He is the worst kind of villain.
No, he isn't. Not at heart. You say that we never knew him, Eleanor, but I did. I knew him as I know myself. If he is wicked, then perhaps so am I.
You are not being reasonable.
You do not understand.
Perhaps I don't. Marianne, how could you have written to him?
I felt myself to be as solemnly engaged to him as if the strictest legal covenant had bound us.
Obviously, he did not feel the same.
He did! Eleanor, I may have been cruelly used, but not by Willoughby.
Who else but by Willoughby?
I do not know.
Well, whomever may have been your enemy, let them be cheated of their triumph by seeing you rise above these circumstances.
I care not who knows that I am wretched. It is easy for those who have no sorrow to talk of calmness and exertion.
Do you think I have no sorrow? Marianne, can you believe me capable of being at ease when you are in this state?
Forgive me. I know that you feel for me, and I'm very sorry to make you unhappy. But mine is a misery which nothing can ever do away. I want to go home.
My dear sisters, so delightful to see you in town. Fanny and I wanted to stop in on you earlier, of course, but we've been very busy visiting and being visited.
Visit. Pardon me.
Whatever is the matter with Marianne? She looks very unwell.
She has had a nervous complaint.
Oh, I am sorry for that. At her time of life, anything of an illness destroys the bloom forever.
Too pale. Too thin. Too pale and thin.
She's not that thin.
Fanny used to say that Marianne would certainly marry better than you did, but the way she looks now, I doubt she'll catch a man worth more than 500 or 600 a year. You will excuse me, twittering about marriage like an old dowager, but we have all been talking of nothing else in my household. It is finally time, you know, for Edward to settle.
Is Mr. Ferrars going to be married?
It is not battened down entirely yet, but his mother has determined that she will give him his independence just as soon as he marries the Honourable Miss Morton.
Lord Morton's daughter, she comes with £30,000.
£30,000!
And what does Mr. Ferrars think of the arrangement?
I do not know if his mother has told him yet. No doubt he will be delighted. It is an excellent match. But that's on the come. In the meantime, we want to invite you to a little dinner party. You must attend. Fanny is wild to see you.
A party?
A party?
A party!
Miss Steele.
Miss Dashwood, Miss Marianne.
Look, Lucy, it's our particular friends.
How do you happen to be in this company?
I may as well ask the same thing of you. I confess that I'm amazed to see you, for you told me, you know, that you would not ever come to town at all, and yet here you are.
Why are you here?
Why, we two and your sister-in-law are the fastest of friends, yes. Isn't that funny? Last week we were at the sweetest little milliner's shop on Bradley Street, and we fell to talking with a terribly elegant lady waiting there, chatting about her boy, who was being quite a monkey with the hats. I thought the milliner should faint, and Lucy had such a way with children, and one thing led to another, and turns out that elegant lady was Mrs. John Dashwood, and we have visited here every day since then. And she invited us to the party, and look, here we are! Now, isn't that funny?
Oh, good. You've all discovered each other, I see. What a small world that you are all such friends already. Come, ladies, let me introduce you.
Miss Dashwood, pray for me. In a moment I shall meet the person that is to be my mother.
Our host, Mrs. Ferrars. Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Ferris says that the Miss Steeles are exceedingly pretty.
Miss Dashwood, Robert Ferrars, you reside in Devonshire, I'm told, in a cottage.
We do.
For my own part, I am excessively fond of a cottage. There's always so much elegance in a cottage. If I had any money to spare, I should build a cottage and have all my friends visit me in my cottage. My intimate friend, Lord Cortland of the Lancashire Cortlands, came to me the other day and laid before me 3 different architectural schemes. "Which one should I build, Roby?" said he. "My dear Cortland," said I, throwing them all directly into the fire, "do not build any of these deplorable shacks. By all means, build a cottage. A cottage, man. A cottage, a cottage, a cottage." And that was the end of that.
Indeed.
And you, Miss Steele, do you live in a cottage?
I do not.
More's the pity.
And that is Edward's brother. They are very unlike. Mrs. Dashwood, I cannot thank you enough for your invitation to dine tonight. Anne and I are quite overwhelmed by your generosity. I only hope we do not intrude.
Oh, my dear Lucy, how could a charming creature such as you ever intrude? Indeed, Mother. Mother says how unusual it is nowadays to encounter young women who are as modest and respectful as leisurely Miss Steeles. I assure you, my dear, young women of your sort are always welcome here.
Oh, Mrs. Ferrars, you are too kind. I could just stay here forever. Your home is so lovely. These sketches on the wall, so well executed. Did you draw them, Mrs. Dashwood?
These were done by Eleanor.
Did you know we should have Miss Morton paint something for us? She does paint most delightfully.
Beautifully indeed, but she does everything well.
Who is Miss Morton? Why are you talking about Miss Morton? Eleanor made these, and they are beautiful.
Miss Morton is Lord Morton's daughter.
Dear Eleanor, don't mind them. Please, don't let them make you unhappy.
Shall we go in for dinner?
My dearest friend, can you believe it?
Believe what, exactly?
Did you not see Mrs. Ferrars' way of treating me yesterday? So exceedingly affable, so kind from the moment I was introduced. She really seemed to take a special fancy to me. Were you not quite struck with it?
She was certainly very civil to you.
Have you seen nothing but civility?
If his family knew of your engagement, nothing could be more promising than their treatment of you. But as that is not the case...
Why in the world would they pretend to like me if they did not? Mrs. Ferrars is affability itself, and so is your sister-in-law, and I think it will all work out splendidly, and all my fears were for nothing.
I suppose time will tell.
Why did you never mention, Miss Dashwood, how exceedingly charming your sister-in-law is? She is generosity itself. She wrote Anne and I a little note this morning and invited both of us to stay with her for a bit. Isn't that very delightful? Are you ill, Miss Dashwood? You seem rather low.
I never was in better health.
Really? You do not look it. Oh, I'm so glad that his mother loves me already. I would have given up all hope if she had treated me in a forbidding sort of way and made clear that I was unwelcome. For when she does dislike people, I know it is most unshakable and violent.
Mr. Edward Ferrars, miss.
Mr. Ferrars?
Miss Dashwood. Miss Steele.
Please, do be seated.
Thank you, Miss Dashwood. I came to inquire after your mother.
She's very well, thank you.
Excellent. And young Miss Margaret, your sister.
Very well. Very well, thank you. Edward, I heard you announced.
Miss Marianne, how do you do?
Oh, I am very unwell. But don't think of me, Edward. Eleanor is well, you see, and surely that is all that matters.
Does not London not agree with you?
Not at all. I expected to find much pleasure here, but the sight of you is the only comfort it has afforded thus far.
Ah.
We spent such a terrible, wretched day at Harley Street yesterday, Edward. I've so much to say to you about it. Which cannot be said at the moment. But why weren't you there?
I'm afraid I was engaged elsewhere.
Engaged elsewhere, when such friends were to be met? Perhaps, Miss Marianne, you think that young men never keep any engagements at all. Not so, indeed. I am sure he must have had something very important to do to keep him from us. Did you have some pressing previous obligation, Edward? I knew it. What else could have kept you away? Edward really has the most active conscience in the whole world, you know, and would only have disappointed us because he did not want to break his word to another. Indeed, he is the most fearful of failing expectations or causing pain to others of anybody I ever met, and he always tries to do the right thing, whether it makes him happy or not. Edward, it is so, and I will say it.
Please do excuse me, I have only come for a moment. I have an appointment to see a horse. To buy. I may buy the horse, if it is a good horse.
Going so soon? Again? Edward, this must not be. I am afraid I must also be on my way. If you are leaving, Mr. Ferrers, perhaps you would be so good as to escort me as far as the park.
Why, yes, delighted. Miss Marianne. Miss Dashwood.
What could have brought her here? Could she not see that we wanted her gone? How teasing to Edward. Why so? We are all his friends, and he has known Lucy the longest. I am sure that he was happy to see her. You know, Eleanor, I cannot bear when you say things that you know are not true.
Miss Marianne, Miss Dashwood, have you heard the news? At your sister's house, a scandal, a real scandal.
I cannot think what is taking Lucy so long at her toilette this morning. She must fix a ribbon in her hair too, I suppose. After seeing mine.
Set ribbon suits you marvelously, my dear. Très jolie. Very pretty.
Oh, now, you are going to laugh at me too, but why shouldn't I wear pink ribbons? Pink is the doctor's favorite color, true, but that doesn't mean I wear them just to please him.
You young ladies and your beau. It's all so diverting.
Oh, la.
But you must not keep every heart for yourself, Miss Anne. You must leave some suitors for dear Miss Lucy.
Lucy gets more than enough attention, ma'am.
Pray tell.
Lucy has a beau herself, but not a soul knows it but me. There's a vast deal I could tell you on that account, were I so free.
Now, Miss Anne, you know Miss Lucy and yourself are family to me, and I am afraid that we permit no secrets in this family. I will ask you again, madame, who is the lucky gentleman, and where is his lodging?
Oh, no, I mustn't tell, ma'am. My, is it not that who spotted us?
No, no, I will not be put off so easily.
Lord! Well, you are so fond of Lucy, I'm sure there'll be no difficulty. But you must promise you will never tell her that I told you. She's engaged, Mum!
Ah, engaged?
To...
Your sister-in-law threw them out of the house in minute to
think my sister wants to rest, Mum. Please let me attend to her. Marianne, I knew.
Has Edward written to you?
I have known it these 4 months. Lucy told it to me herself and swore me to secrecy before I knew what I was promising.
How have you borne it?
What else was there to do?
For 4 months? And yet, you do love him.
Yes. But I do not love only him, and I was happy to spare my loved ones from my unhappiness.
How could Edward be engaged to that creature?
People make mistakes, Marianne. He was very young when he met Lucy, and confined as he was by his mother and upbringing, I am sure that she was very refreshing. She is lively and can make herself agreeable when she wishes. And if, when he grew older, he perhaps began to see something of her true nature, I am sure that he was too honourable to break off the engagement. Edward, as we have always said, has a most active conscience.
But his behaviour towards you.
I must acquit Edward of all essential misconduct.
Eleanor!
He never promised me anything, Marianne. It's not his fault. We got carried away by our own conjectures.
I am sure that he feels something for you.
Even if that is true, there is nothing to be done about it. Edward will marry Lucy, and I truly wish him very happy.
If your way of thinking is so practical, I am not surprised that you are calm.
I understand. You do not suppose that I have ever felt much? For 4 months, Marianne, I have known of Edward's engagement. For 4 months, I have had to listen to Lucy's hopes and exultations again and again. For 4 months, I have never been able to confide in anyone. I am to be divided from Edward forever. Nothing has ever proved him unworthy, and I believe now that perhaps he does feel something, as you say. In short, I have suffered all the punishments of extreme attachment without ever enjoying any of its advantages. If you could believe me capable of feeling anything, Marianne, surely you can understand that I have felt this loss very deeply. My current composure is the product of my constant and painful exertion to maintain control over myself. I have done my duty, but believe me, I have been very unhappy.
Eleanor, I do not know what to say.
Promise me something.
Anything.
Promise never to speak of the matter with the least appearance of bitterness. Speak civilly and discreetly about it to anyone who may inquire. Yes, even Edward and Lucy.
But
please, dear.
Yes. Yes, of course. I promise.
You have heard, I suppose, the very shocking discovery that took place under our roof yesterday.
Shocking.
Appalling.
Absurd.
Fanny says she shall never think well of anybody again after being so deceived. I now wish, said poor Fanny, that we even asked your sisters to stay with us instead of the Steeles.
Why, thank you.
Generous?
Most generous.
We sent for Edward, but I am sorry to relate what happened. His mother explained that she would give him his independence if he would simply give up the girl and marry Miss Morton. Told him even that she would settle on him the Norfolk estate, which brings in a good 1,000 a year. But if he chose to marry Miss Steele, she would disown him entirely. And indeed, if he tried to find any profession at all, she would do everything she could to prevent him from advancing in it.
Gracious God!
Well, may you exclaim, Marianne, at Mrs. Fair's generosity. Edward said very little. What he did say was unfeeling indeed to his mother and sister, who strove with all their might to help him see the error of his ways. He refused to give up his engagement. He will stand to it, though it ruins him.
Then he has acted like an honest man. I beg your pardon, Mr. Dashwood, but I have some concern in the business, for Lucy Steele is my relation.
I do not mean to speak disrespectfully of any connection of yours, madam, but in the present case, you know, the match is impossible.
Well, sir, and how did it end?
What is to happen?
Did his mother cast him off?
Is he to be ruined entirely?
I am sorry to say that it finished in a most unhappy rupture. Edward is dismissed forever from Mrs. Fair's notice and will be disinherited. His mother is determined, with a very natural kind of spirit, to give it all to Robert immediately.
Thus ends Edward Ferrars, the great untrappable rich bachelor.
How does he propose to marry anyone now that he's penniless?
Impossible.
And Mr. Robert Ferrars is a rich man.
A very rich man.
And very unmarried.
It is indeed a grave situation. I see the natural anxiety upon your faces, but do not worry. There is no material danger to Fanny's health, although she suffers severely. The angel...
This town gets worse every year, my dears. Bad behavior all around. Thank heavens we'll be back in Barton soon. We will stop only for a short visit with my Charlotte at Cleveland, and then we will be home again as quick as you please.
Cleveland? No, I cannot go to Cleveland.
Oh, because Mr. Willoughby has property in the county? Indeed, they are almost neighbors. I think one can see his house from a hill on Charlotte's estate. Oh, I am sorry, but you will never see him, my dear. I have told my Charlotte all about his wicked treatment of you, and her dear Mr. Palmer would shoot him like a pheasant of sight. You'll be very safe, I assure you.
Mom, thank you. It is an excellent plan. We are very happy to go with you.
Eleanor, you cannot expect me to go.
Marianne, please. We will only be there a few days and shall remain in the house the entire time. There is no chance that you will ever see him. We may even ask Colonel Brandon to escort us back home from there. Please, it is the quickest, most eligible manner in which to return, and you know we are both eager to be gone.
I would be honored to escort you whenever you wish to leave the Palmers. Miss Dashwood, I must speak to you about another matter. I have heard of the injustice your friend, Mr. Ferrars, has suffered, and I wondered if I might be of some use.
How so?
They say that he intends to enter the church. The living of Delaford is vacant and mine to appoint. Would you be willing to tell him that I would name him as rector if he thinks it worth his acceptance? I only wish it were more valuable, but it is enough for him to marry upon.
That is very generous, Colonel. But wouldn't you rather offer him the position yourself?
I do not know him well, Miss Dashwood. I've only met him 2 or 3 times. I should think, as you are his old friend, he would be more inclined to hear the happy news from you.
Miss Dashwood, I received a note from Mrs. Jennings that you wished to speak with me.
Yes. Hello, yes. I have something of consequence to inform you of. I am charged with the most agreeable office. Our dear friend, Colonel Brandon, has desired me to say that, understanding you mean to take orders, he has great pleasure in offering you the living of Delaford. Allow me to congratulate you, and to join in his wish that it may allow you to establish all your views of domesticity.
Colonel Brandon?
Yes. Colonel Brandon has heard of your troubles and wishes to help in any way that he can.
Colonel,
As do we all.
Colonel Brandon, give me a living.
The unkindness of your family has made you astonished to find kindness anywhere.
No. I'm sure I owe this to you.
You are very much mistaken. I have had no hand in it. Not that I wouldn't have had a hand in it. If I had had a hand to give in it.
Miss Dashwood, when I became engaged to Miss Steele, I was very young and quite stupid, really. Colonel Brandon lodges, I think, on St. James Street.
I believe so.
I must hurry away then to thank him.
May I give you my unceasing good wishes for your happiness?
And mine for yours, Miss Dashwood.
I will return soon.
At least take your shawl.
Fever, they say, and very serious. Her father died from the same, you know.
That stock was never strong.
Dying of a broken heart.
But such a rapid decay. They say the doctor has been there 4 times in 2 days, and the Palmers have removed themselves, lest it be contagious.
Molly has from cook that the doctor is very grave, grows graver still.
Well, that's the sad end of the whole affair, I suppose. And her so young. Poor Miss Dashwood.
Poor Miss Dashwood.
Poor Miss Dashwood.
Poor Miss Dashwood.
Eleanor, is Mamma coming? We will send for her, but it may take some time for her to get here.
But she must not go by London. I shall never see her if she goes by London.
Marianne?
Helena, please. I am hot. I am too hot.
Doctor, she's not herself.
I bleed her.
I will hold the bowl.
Miss Dashwood, I would prefer if you would send a man in. I cannot have you fainting. Miss Dashwood, it might be best if your mother was sent for soon.
going to die?
We must dispatch a messenger to Barton for my mother. She must get here as soon as possible.
With your leave, I will deliver the message myself. It will be faster and I will bring her back with me directly.
That is not necessary, Colonel.
Mr. Ashwood, give me something to do. I will return with your mother. Look for us before 10 o'clock.
Marianne, can you hear me? You cannot do this to me. I will not stand for it. You are being very ridiculous. I don't mean it. I'm sorry. I promise you, Marianne, that if you get better, I will never chide you again. Please, dearest, you cannot leave me. Do not leave me alone here. Please.
Miss Dashwood.
Your business cannot be with me, sir. The servants must have forgotten to tell you that Mr. Palmer was not at home.
Had they told me that Mr. Palmer and all his relations were at the devil, it would have not turned me from the door. How is your sister?
You have no right to ask. Mr. Willoughby!
Forgive me. I've been drinking.
What do you want?
I want to make things right, if I can. I want something like forgiveness for Marianne.
Marianne? You should not be so familiar.
Is she in as much danger as they say? Is she dying? It is my fault, I know. Please, let me see her.
No.
I did not plan any of this. I never wanted to hurt anyone.
I must ask you to leave.
When I met your sister, I only wanted an idle dalliance, something to do in the country.
Mr. Willoughby!
I mean, you misunderstand. I thought that it was only a harmless flirtation. And at first, I thought that surely Marianne also knew that it could not lead to anything. You must see that it was impossible for me to seriously pursue a girl with no fortune, no station, no, forgive me, no notable family. But quite against my intentions, the part I played became the most pressing reality. I found myself most terribly in love.
Did you?
I was going to ask her to marry me.
And what precisely stopped you? You must think me very foolish indeed.
My luck went bad. Mrs. Smith had somehow been informed of a regrettable connection in my past.
I know your history, Mr. Willoughby.
I can guess who might have told you. Ask yourself if he is truly impartial. It was wrong, yes. I ought never to have touched Jane. But do not suppose that because I was a libertine, she was a saint.
Any weakness on her part is no excuse.
I assure you, Miss Dashwood, I have paid richly for my sins. Mrs. Smith pronounced me no gentleman, and I was summarily disinherited. I had many debts. Should I have gone to prison? I had no practical choice but to give up Marianne.
When you left Marianne that day, did you tell her that you would soon return?
I do not know what I told her. I was out of my head. I had to resolve to forget her entirely.
You did an excellent job. You ignored her letters, shunned her in public, exposed her to the worst kind of gossip and intrigue. Is this all evidence of the great love you have borne her?
Everything had already been settled between Miss Grey and me.
Then you have made your choice, and now you will be held to it. Goodbye, Mr. Willoughby.
I must see her.
Seeing you will endanger her recovery.
Recovery?
Her fever broke last night. She is no longer in any material danger.
Dashwood, you have been very cruel.
As have you.
You needn't punish me any more, Miss Dashwood. I am unhappy enough, I assure you. My marriage alone is just reward for my folly.
You should not speak of your wife in that way.
I shouldn't, should I? Yet, if ever on thine eyelid stood the tear that pity had engendered, drop one here. This man was happy once, but conscience has her part, and writes a doomsday sentence upon his heart. Hope, the poem, Cooper.
You really should leave.
I will, before I make you hate me entirely, Miss Dashwood. Will you someday repeat to your sister what I've been telling her? Tell her that my heart was never unfaithful to her. Marianne is most probably lost to me forever. But were I, someday, by any blessed chance free again...
Mr. Willoughby!
Yes. Well, goodbye, Miss Dashwood. God bless you.
Willoughby, I do pity you.
Colonel Brandon, I cannot thank you enough. You shall never know what it meant to me.
If it is not an imposition, Colonel, would you stay? My voice is very weak and tired from the stress of yesterday's journey, but perhaps you could read to Marianne. We must make her confinement an interesting one. He loves her, of course.
To judge from his spirits, he does not think that there is much hope.
He thinks Marianne's affection and opinions too deeply rooted for any change, and even supposing her heart free again, does not believe that he could ever attach her.
Did you know, Colonel, that Shakespeare writes in a rhythm which matches precisely the beats of the human heart? Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. And he had been drinking. Yes, but I think he meant it all. Marianne, may I ask? Yes? Do you perceive now that marriage to Willoughby would have condemned you to a continual unhappiness? Can you imagine being bound forever to someone so endlessly selfish? Do you think him selfish? The whole of his behavior, from the beginning to the end of the affair, has been based on selfishness. His own pleasure is, in every particular, his ruling principle. I suppose my happiness was never his object. At present, he regrets marrying for money. And why does he regret it? Because it has not made him perfectly happy. But, had he married you, he would have always been poor, suffering all of poverty's attendant evils. He has already proven that he is capable of treating you with great cruelness and indifference when it suits his purposes. In those circumstances, who knows how you might have fared? Eleanor, I agree with you. Are you surprised? A little. I am glad we can speak about it. I am relieved to hear that he was not always acting a part, not always deceiving me. It makes me feel not quite such a fool. I think I may even understand how he justified his actions entirely. Do you still acquit him? No. I assure you that I see everything as you desire me to. He was very wrong in what he did, and I never could have been happy with him after knowing how he treated that unfortunate girl. But I also feel sorry for him. Is that very foolish? No. No, not at all. I am grateful that you told me, Eleanor. I do not regret anything, I assure you, except my own behavior. Do you compare your behaviour with his? No. I compare it to what it ought to have been. I compare it to yours.
Well, you are a goose.
We must turn back.
Are you tired?
No. The Colonel has promised to read The Tempest with me this evening, and I don't wish to be late. He's very good.
I suppose you know, ma'am, that Mr. Ferris is married. Betsy, Miss Marianne's ill.
No, I'm fine.
Walter, please. Who told you that Mr. Ferris was married, Thomas?
I just saw his new bride, Miss Steele, as was. She and Mr. Ferris were stopping in a chaise outside the New London Inn. She said hello and sent her best to the family, especially Miss Eleanor, and I made free to wish her joy.
But she told you that she was married, Thomas.
Yes, ma'am. She smiled and said she was Mrs. Ferris now.
Was Mr. Ferris with her?
I didn't see him, ma'am, but I imagine he's well enough, for she seemed vastly contented.
Helena?
Margaret, go and fetch us some pretty flowers, won't you?
Oh, yes. Mama, Colonel Brandon is at the gate.
The tea. Perhaps go and meet him, dearest.
Mama, it's not the Colonel. It's Edward.
What?
It's Edward.
Good God, it is Edward.
I will be calm. I will be mistress of myself.
Sit.
Edward! I do wish you joy.
Mum?
I hope that you have left Mrs. Ferris very well.
Rather well, I think, yes.
Is Mrs. Ferris at Longstaple?
No, my mother is in town.
I meant to inquire after Mrs. Edward Ferris.
Perhaps you mean Mrs. Robert Ferris.
Mrs. Robert Ferris?
Mrs. Robert Ferris?
Perhaps you do not know. You may not have heard that my brother is lately married to Miss Lucy Steele.
Your brother?
Yes. I had a letter from Miss Steele, now Mrs. Robert Ferris. They struck up an acquaintance. My brother is very popular now, you see, because of his inheritance. And she set her captain, as I believe they say, and they were married last week. Miss Dashwood, you must allow me to tell you how ardently I am sensible of the impropriety from the moment I first saw you. Oh, Eleanor, if I loved you any less, I might be able to talk about it more.
Mr. Ferris! Mr. Ferris! Your behaviour in this has been very wrong.
Very wrong. Very blamable. Eleanor, when I met Lucy Steele, I was a very foolish, idle, ignorant young man. I was not allowed to choose a profession, and I had nothing to do but fancy myself in love.
But your behaviour to me...
I was simple enough to think that because my faith was promised to another, there could be no danger in my being with you. And then when I knew I was in love, I thought, the danger is only my own. I am doing no injury to anyone but myself.
Mr. Ferris.
But won't you forgive me, darling? Dearest Eleanor, please. Won't you be mine?
Edward.
Eleanor, may we come in? Ow!
Eleanor! I know!
is dark and the moon is the only light we see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. Oh, darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. If the sky we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear. Just as long as you stand by me. Oh, darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me,